The Hearth of the Holly Blueberry. In a little house nestled in the heart of a frosted rosebush lived a fairy named Elara. Her home was a single, perfect sphere woven from dried grasses, willow stems, and lined with the softest milkweed fluff. A window, made from a clear, hardened drop of maple syrup, looked out onto the sleeping garden. Tonight was Christmas Eve, and a gentle snow was falling, tucking the world in under a soft white blanket. The air inside was warm and smelled like cinnamon. The cozy room was filled with the scent of a tiny pot of cinnamon simmering near Elara's hearth. Her hearth was special. It was made of glowing holly blue berries. They gave off a soft blue light and a cozy warmth. Their light made moving blue patterns on the round walls. Elara was preparing her Christmas Eve. She hummed a soft, buzzing tune as she flitted about, her wings leaving faint trails of golden dust in the warm air. This is what was happening in the little fairy house. A cozy feast. On a table made of a deep purple pansy petal, she had laid out her simple feast. A small glass of warm dandelion tea with a drop of honey, a single roasted sunflower seed dusted with salt, and for a special treat, a tiny cake made from crushed bee bread and glazed with crystallized sap. A living tree. In the corner, her Christmas tree was not a tree at all, but a small potted rosemary plant. She had decorated it with what the winter garden had provided: a red rose hips and miniature baubles. The softest sounds. The only sounds were the gentle hiss and pop of the holly blue berries on the hearth and the soft patter of snowflakes against her syrup window. A friendly spider, who lived in the highest corner of the woven ceiling, had strung a single, perfect web that caught the blue light and scattered it into 1,000 tiny rainbows. A welcome guest. Just as she was about to sit, a soft scratch came at her door, which was a curled piece of birch bark. She opened it to find a small, shivering shrew named Pippin, his nose twitching. "The snow is deep, Elara," he said in a high voice, his small eyes wide open. "I smelled the cinnamon." Elara smiled. "Come in, Pippin. There's room by the hearth." She invited him inside, and he settled onto a rug of woven moss. He stopped shivering as the berry light warmed his fur. She poured him a sip of her dandelion milk, and they shared the sunflower seed, cracking it open between them. And so, the two friends sat together in the cozy blue glow. They watched the snow fall outside, turning the garden into a wonderland. Elara's little house felt peaceful. Before, she was happy alone. Now, she was happy to have a friend with her. It was warm, it was safe, and it was full of a deep, quiet magic. The real gift of a fairy Christmas wasn't a big show. It was the simple, warm feeling of sharing your home with a friend on a quiet, special night. And in the soft, blue light of the hearth, that gift felt more precious than any treasure. The moral: just like Elara shared her cozy home, her special food, and the glowing light from her berries with her cold and hungry friend, we can share what we have too. Christmas isn't just about the presents under the tree. It's about having a kind and welcoming heart. When we make someone else feel happy, safe, and loved, that's when we feel the truest and most magical Christmas joy of all. Bramble's Gift. In the hidden snowy burrow of Glimmerfoot Hollow, the Christmas Eve rush was in full swing. Little gnomes in pointy hats rushed around. Their cheeks were pink from the cold. They were the keepers of the quiet things. They made sure every dewdrop made a perfect frost pattern on the windows, and that night, air smelled of pine and cinnamon. But the most important job, the gifting, was only for the head tinkerer. Bramble Quickfingers was this year's head tinkerer. He stood in his workshop, a small, warm space with soft roots on the walls and a gentle, flickering light. A family of fireflies who were his special friends lived in the wall. Each evening, they would come out of their little root doorways. They would use their soft, glowing lights to help him see as he worked. But he was stumped. Before him sat his masterpiece, a tiny, whirring music box carved from a single acorn. When opened, it would play a tinkling melody and project a miniature aurora borealis onto the ceiling. It was for a human child, a little girl named Elara, who still believed in magic. There was just one problem. The heart gem, a tiny, perfectly clear shard of ice that never melted, which powered the whole thing, was missing. "Oh no!" Bramble said, searching through his paints and thread. "I can't find it." Without the heart gem, the music box was just a carved nut. The other gnomes paused their work, polishing snowflake patterns, softening the dreams of sleeping sparrows, and looked at him with wide, worried eyes. Christmas magic couldn't be late. "The only place to find a new heart gem is the Starlight Pond," said Nettle, Bramble's oldest friend. "But it's at the edge of the Whispering Woods. Nobody goes there on that special night. The woods were deep, and the path was treacherous for one so small." But Bramble thought of Elara, who had left out a single peppermint for the gnomes instead of a cookie, a rare and precious treat. He pulled his red hat down firmly. "Then I will be the first," he announced. Bramble bravely went outside. The human world was a landscape of giants. A single footstep in the snow was a deep crater to him, a fallen pine needle, a mighty log. He used the patterns of the stars to guide him. His little boots made a squeaking sound on the snow. The journey was full of danger. He had to hide from a curious, shaggy dog whose nose was the size of Bramble's whole body. He crossed a vast, icy plain by using twigs as ice picks. The wind, a mere breeze to humans, threatened to pluck him from his feet and send him tumbling like a leaf. Finally, he reached the Whispering Woods, a thicket of frozen bushes under the great oak tree. The air was still and silent, and the Starlight Pond was just a patch of black ice nestled between two roots, reflecting the brilliant stars above. And there, in the very center of the ice, set inside it like a precious stone, was a heart gem. It glowed with a soft light from within. The gem sank. Bramble's heart jumped. The ice was thick, and he had no tool to break it. He tapped it with his boot. It was like iron. He started to feel hopeless. He had come so far, only to fail. He looked up at the bright, steady North Star. "Please," he whispered, a tiny puff of steam in the cold air. "It's for Christmas." As if in answer, he heard a soft, crunching sound getting closer. A fox with silver fur sprinkled with snow stepped out of the shadows. Bramble had saved this same fox a long time ago. The fox tilted its head, recognizing the small, red-hatted creature. The fox padded to the edge of the pond, lowered its head, and breathed a warm, gentle breath onto the ice. It wasn't a melt, but a softening. The fox then tapped the ice once, precisely, with its paw right next to the gem. A hairline crack appeared. Understanding, Bramble hurried forward and was able to pop the gem out. He bowed deeply to the fox, and the fox bowed back and disappeared into the forest. Bramble ran all the way back to Glimmerfoot Hollow. The gem was safe in his pocket. He ran into his workshop. The other gnomes were waiting, hardly breathing, with hands that shook but were steady. He put the ice gem into the music box and closed the lid. It began to play a beautiful, tinkling song, and a swirl of colored lights, like the northern lights, danced on the ceiling more beautiful than any of them could have imagined. The gnomes cheered. As the clock in the human house struck midnight, Bramble and his crew sneaked into Elara's room through a small door by the wall. She was fast asleep, one hand tucked under her cheek. Bramble placed the acorn music box carefully on her bed, right next to the half-eaten peppermint. As they turned to leave, Elara moved. Her eyes opened slowly. In the dim room, she noticed the little wooden acorn. She saw a soft, colorful glow on the ceiling above her. For just a moment, she thought she saw the flicker of a red hat slipping through a crack in the wall. She smiled and whispered, "Thank you," into the quiet night. Back home, Bramble felt warm and happy by the fire. He learned that you don't have to be big to be brave, and you don't have to be loud to make a magical difference. The truest magic is made with a kind and courageous heart. This Christmas, your best present isn't under the tree. It's the love you give away. When you make someone else feel happy, safe, and loved, that is the warmest, truest, and most magical Christmas joy of all. You make the world brighter. Keep shining. Merry Christmas.